Hello and welcome. Today we're going full-on digital detective. We're about to crack open what's affectionately known as spinning rust. Yup, the classic hard drive. To learn the secret language that's being written on it every single second. You know, every time you click, every file you download, and especially every file you delete, you're leaving behind a trail of digital breadcrumbs. Your hard drive has a memory that is way, way longer than you'd think. So the real question is, are you listening to the stories it's telling? Let's dive in. Okay, first things first. If we're going to find any clues, we have to understand the crime scene. And when it comes to digital forensics, the crime scene is the physical hard drive itself. We've got to know the layout. We tend to think of our data as just out there, in the cloud, somewhere invisible. But it's not. It's incredibly physical. Your data lives on these shiny spinning disks called platters, all stacked up on a central spindle. And see those little arms? Those are the read-write heads, and they fly just nanometers, literally nanometers, above the surface to grab that data. So to find the clues, you've got to know the map. Right at the heart of it all are the platters. Just picture these super dense, perfectly smooth disks coated in a special magnetic material. Every single photo, every document, every game you've ever installed is stored right here, encoded as billions of tiny, tiny magnetic patterns. So if the platter is like a vinyl record, then the tracks are kind of like the grooves. But here's the cool part. A record has one single spiral groove. A hard drive platter? Oh no. It has thousands of perfect, separate concentric circles. That's the basic filing system for where your data is going to live. And now we zoom all the way into the smallest piece of this whole puzzle, the sector. Each one of those tracks is sliced up into these little segments, almost like pieces of a pie. One single sector, usually holding just 512 bytes, is the most basic building block of storage on the drive. It's where the rubber really meets the road. So, okay, we've got the physical parts down, but how in the world does a computer turn billions of these tiny sectors into the neat files and folders that we see on our screen? Well, that takes a whole other layer of organization, a kind of digital filing cabinet. Let's open it up. You know, investigators don't just jump in and start clicking around. It's a really methodical process, kind of like peeling back the layers of an onion. They start at the outside with the physical disk itself. Then they look at the big partitions or volumes. Then they dig into the file system that organizes everything. And only then do they look at the actual applications that made the data. Now, the most important layer here is the file system. Seriously, think of it as the librarian for your hard drive. It keeps this massive index, like an old-school card catalog, that tells the operating system exactly where to find the first piece of that vacation photo. You know, go to plotter 2, track 345, sector 12. Without that file system, your drive would just be a chaotic mess of ones and zeros. Useless. And just like real-world libraries, not all file systems use the same rules. Windows loves to use NTFS, Macs are all about HFS+, and Linux has its own systems like ext4. For a forensic investigator, the very first step is figuring out which language the drive is speaking. You can't get it to talk until you know how. All right, now for the part that I think is just fascinating. What happens when we try to make our data disappear? Well, as it turns out, the data we think we've deleted, it often leaves behind a digital ghost, just kind of hanging out, waiting to be found. I mean, think about it. You drag a file to the recycling bin, you click empty, and poof, gone, right? Well, not quite. Your computer has been keeping a little secret from you. So here's the big secret. When you delete a file, the data doesn't actually get erased. Not at all. All you're really doing is telling that file system, our librarian, to just tear up the card catalog entry for that file. The space is then marked as available, but the actual ones and zeros of your file, they're still sitting there, perfectly intact, just waiting for new data to come along and write over them. Which, by the way, is why you should always use secure deletion software if you're getting rid of an old computer. And here is the proof. This is a forensic tool called the Sleuth Kit. And look at that. It's just pulled up a whole list of files that the user thought were gone for good. For an investigator, this is an absolute goldmine. It's like finding a perfectly preserved diary that someone tried to throw in the trash. So, we know that files you thought were gone can be brought back, but that's just scratching the surface. What if somebody intentionally tries to hide data? Not by deleting it, but by camouflaging it right out in the open. Well, that's where we get into the sophisticated art of digital hiding. This whole technique has a name: steganography. Now, this isn't encryption where you scramble a message. This is about hiding the fact that a message even exists in the first place. Think of it like digital invisible ink. The whole point is that nobody should even suspect there's a secret to be found. So take a look at this picture of a ship. Seems harmless, right? It's the perfect disguise. To us, it's just a picture. But to a computer, it's millions of pixels, and each pixel has a specific color value. By making tiny, microscopic changes to those color values, changes you and I could never see, you can secretly embed a whole text file, or a password list, or even another picture, completely hidden inside the first one. And the methods they use for this are just incredibly clever. You can do things like modify the least significant bit of an image's pixel data, a change so tiny the human eye can't possibly spot it. Or you can even tuck secret data away in the little bits of unused space that exist within the file system itself. But this idea isn't new, and it's not just digital. Check out this real-world case. A federal employee was tipping off an investment firm. Instead of risky phone calls, he just adjusted his office window blinds. If the blinds were high, it meant a positive forecast. If they were low, it meant negative. It was a secret message hidden in the most boring, everyday action imaginable. That is the soul of steganography. So with all these layers, the physical disk, the file systems, the ghost files, the data hidden in plain sight, how on earth does an investigator find the truth? Well, they use powerful tools that let them see the drive not like we do, but like the computer itself does. This is the sleuth kit again. It lets an analyst completely bypass the normal operating system. See how it's not showing you pretty icons and folders? It's showing raw data, file system type, FAT16, the exact range of sectors. This lets an investigator see the deep underlying structure of the drive and find things that are totally hidden from the normal user. And to go even deeper, they use something called a hex editor. It looks complicated, but what it's doing is showing the raw binary data of a file, its fundamental DNA of ones and zeros. An analyst can scan through this raw code looking for patterns or file headers that might reveal a secret hidden inside. Sometimes the clues aren't even in the data itself, but in the metadata, which is just a fancy word for the data about the data. Even a common image viewer can show you a file's properties, when it was made, what camera took the picture. For an analyst, any little thing in that metadata that looks out of place can be a huge red flag. So from the physical spin of a metal platter all the way to the invisible ghosts of data you thought was gone, your hard drive is this silent witness. It remembers far more than you realize, and it can tell stories you've completely forgotten. So I'll leave you with this question. What story is your digital footprint telling right now? Thanks for joining me.